Russian Z resources acknowledge the difficult situation of their units in the Sumy direction. According to the Northern Channel, the 234th Airborne Assault Regiment of the Russian Armed Forces suffered serious losses in the battles near Yunakovka and found itself in a critical situation. On May the 7th, the same source reported that Ukrainian forces had broken through the defences of the 104th Airborne Regiment in Yunakovka. It was then claimed that the 234th Regiment would be sent to reinforce them in order to repel the breakthrough. However, the attempt to regain the lost positions was unsuccessful. On August the 8th, Z Channel clarified that the situation had developed extremely unfavorably for the Russian armed forces. Things didn't turn out as rosy as we would have liked in Yunakovka. The 234th Airborne Assault Regiment, while conducting stabilization, suffered greatly, exhausted by many days of fighting, and will probably be withdrawn for restoration. Logistics are blocked. Several of our groups are surrounded in the southern part. Attempts to unblock are under fire pressure. The situation is critical. Either we break through the corridor and hold the bridgehead, or we risk losing the stronghold entirely. Now they are deciding who will dictate the terms on this section of the front tomorrow, the Russian resource wrote. The report indicates that Ukrainian troops not only held the breakthrough, but also managed to block the enemy's supply lines, threatening the existence of one of the key Russian strongholds in this sector. Earlier, media reported that Putin's army is again trapped in Sumy region. The Ukrainian armed forces have driven the occupiers into a cauldron. The situation is difficult for the Russian armed forces in the area of the village of Alexeyevka. The occupiers made a serious miscalculation, as a result of which the group was practically cut off from the main forces. For now, we are strengthening ourselves in the Alexeyevka area so as not to slip into a cauldron. We let through between Kondratovka and Andreyevka. They drove us in. There is water on 3 sides and the Ukrainian armed forces on the 4th. The source reports. Supplying the Russian group in this area has proven to be virtually impossible. The only logistical route is by water, but it is also completely controlled by the Ukrainian defense forces. The boat is there now. That's all the logistics, and the logistics, is in the crosshairs of their drones, the Z author admits. He emphasizes that the Russian military is currently in an extremely difficult situation. The guys are really in a meat grinder now. There is no approach, no retreat. Everything that can be ironed out is ironed out, complains Northern Channel.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky rejected on Saturday formally ceding Ukrainian territory, stressing that Kiev must be part of any negotiations to end the war, in a video address. According to Associated Press, he dismissed the planned summit between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, warning that any peace deal excluding Kyiv would lead to stillborn decisions. The meeting, scheduled for Friday in Alaska, is seen as a potential breakthrough after weeks of expressing frustration that more was not being done to quell the fighting. Zelensky said Ukraine's territorial integrity must be non-negotiable and emphasized that lasting peace must include Ukraine's voice at the table.
Шановні українці, українки, президент Трамп оголосив про підготовку своєї зустрічі з Путіним на Алясці, дуже далеко від цієї війни, яка триває на нашій землі, проти нашого народу, яку все одно не закінчити без нас, без України. Путін не вірив в наших людей, тому ухвалив це своє безнадійне рішення спробувати взяти Україну. Це було його головною помилкою – не зважати на українців. Я вірю в наших людей, бо українці сильні, українці захищають своє. Багато хто в світі став на бік України за час війни. Навіть ті, хто з Росією, знають, що вона чинить зло. Звісно, ми не дамо Росії нагород за зроблене. Український народ заслуговує на мир. Але всі партнери мають розуміти, що таке достойний мир. Цю війну треба закінчувати, і Росія має її закінчити. Росія її почала та затягує, не слухаючи ніякі дедлайни. І саме це проблема, а не щось інше. Відповідь на українське територіальне питання є вже в Конституції України. Відступати від цього ніхто не буде і не зможе. Дарувати свою землю окупанту українці не будуть. Україна готова до реальних рішень, які можуть дати мир. Будь-які рішення, які проти нас, будь-які рішення, які без України, вони одночасно і рішення проти миру. Вони нічого не дадуть. Це мертві рішення. Вони ніколи не спрацюють. А нам усім потрібен реальний, живий мир, який люди будуть поважати. Ми готові разом з президентом Трампом, разом з усіма нашими партнерами працювати заради реального і, головне, тривалого миру. Миру, який не розвалиться через бажання Москви. Я дякую всім нашим людям за те, що ми разом. Україна є. Дякую всім нашим воїнам за те, що ми зберегли незалежність. Стійте міцно. Це наша земля. Ми – це Україна. Слава Україні!
The United States and Russia are working toward an agreement to end the war in Ukraine, one that would formalize Russia's control over territory it seized during the invasion, Bloomberg reported on August 8, citing unnamed sources familiar with the discussion. US and Russian officials are negotiating a deal on territorial matters ahead of a potential summit between Presidents Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, which could happen as soon as next week. The US is also seeking approval from Ukraine and its European allies, though the deal remains uncertain. Putin's main condition is that Ukraine surrenders control of its entire eastern Donbass region comprised of Luhansk and Donetsk, as well as Crimea Peninsula, which was illegally annexed by Russia in 2014. This would require Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to order the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from parts of eastern Luhansk and Donetsk regions still under Kiev's control, effectively giving Russia a victory that its military has not been able to secure since the full-fledged invasion, which has now entered its fourth year. In return, Russia would halt its offensive in the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions along the current front line. As Bloomberg noted, the deal would effectively freeze the war and pave the way for technical peace talks. Bloomberg described such an agreement as a significant win for Vladimir Putin, who has long sought direct talks with the US to negotiate the war's end, bypassing Ukraine and its European supporters. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky could face a situation where he's forced to accept the loss of Ukrainian territory, while Europe fears being left to enforce a ceasefire while Putin strengthens his military forces. The White House, the Kremlin, and Kyiv have not responded to Bloomberg's request to comment on the agreement. The agreement is primarily intended to halt the conflict and set the stage for a ceasefire and technical discussions on a final peace deal, Bloomberg quoted sources. Previously, the US had been urging Russia to accept an unconditional ceasefire first, to allow room for negotiations aimed at ending the bloodshed.